getting, looking at RAN, uh, when you started RAN, what were some of your intentions in starting the Rainforest Action Network? And maybe what were some of your influences when you decided to do that, both domestically and abroad, I guess you could say?
Well, I had rented a desk at the Friends of the Earth office in San Francisco, and that was their national headquarters in the days of David Brower, the great David Brower, who built Friends of the Earth, but also built the Sierra Club and subsequently Earth Island Institute, and stopped the damming of the Grand Canyon and many other great things. But I was kind of a wannabe environmental activist, and I paid to have a desk at an environmental group's headquarters. And interestingly, I had met native leaders from tropical rainforests while I was near the Grand Canyon in the desert with the Hopi. A lot of native people from around the world do a pilgrimage to Hopi, which is perhaps the oldest tribe in North America, if not the entire Western Hemisphere, right? And so I'd gotten interested in tropical rainforests. It was similar issues that I was fighting in the Southwest, in the sense of mining companies and inequitable treatment from governments and such. And so when I essentially relocated a little more permanently in San Francisco, I proposed to Friends of the Earth that they start a rainforest department and hire me to run it. I had been doing research on something called the People of the Earth Project, which was a directory of support groups for Indigenous peoples around the world. That was part of my work back then. And I had a hard time raising funds for it, but at the point I mostly talked about tropical rainforest, I had an easier time raising funds for it. And at a certain point, Friends of the Earth was in minor meltdown and threw Brower out of the organization. And I'm sitting there after hours with Mike Roselle, and we're in the back corner of the office, and after hours, there were hardly anybody there except Mike and I. And Mike would usually go out and get a 6-pack of beer and come back, and we'd start talking through the issues and working on projects. So we're sitting there with a 6-pack of beer, and I said, well, this effort to advance things at Friends of the Earth is going nowhere. I think we should start our own organization. And he said, what do you want to call it? And the rented desk next to me was Pesticide Action Network. But my, fervor at the time was rainforest. And I looked at Mike, and just as he was popping a beer, and I said, Rainforest Action Network. Well, Mike had been an artist, or is an artist, and a quite clever one. But these are the early days of there weren't laser printers. And there was press-on type. And he pulled out some press-on type, and on a blank piece of photocopying paper, he put on the top of it in big, bold print, Rainforest Action Network. I went into the photocopy room and Xeroxed about 15 copies. And because I was a rentee, I was supposed to write the number of copies on the wall and be charged at the end of the month. But I was pissed off at Friends of the Earth at the time. In fact, I had money on account with them that I never got back. And so I didn't write it down. That was my act of protest on the day of the birthing of Rainforest Action Network. And I came back, and I slapped the pile of photocopied letterhead on the desk, and I said, "We've got letterhead, Mike." And he popped another beer for us, and that was it. The birth of Rainforest Action Network.
It's interesting you talking about the story about, the first, it's an act of defiance. The founding of Rainforest Action Network is an act of defiance around at Friends of the Earth. And I'm wondering if you have had intentions on how to push other more mainstream environmental groups, to the left, or to be, more responsive to these issues.
I quickly healed my ways with Friends of the Earth, which is, in fact, I work closely now with Brent Blackwelder, who was the president of Friends of the Earth US for many, many years. and a great man. Uh, and and in fact, Friends of the Earth had an international network that Brower had set up. And so with the tropical rainforest issue, not many groups around the world were working on it. There were scientists at the IUCN, the International Union of Conservation Nature. There were some people at groups like World Wildlife Fund that were working on tropical rainforests, but mostly in the sense of science and research and less in the sense of advocacy. There was some work going on at the time fighting the World Bank and some of their, derelict ways, funding hydroelectric dams in the Amazon and such. And so we pulled together a mailing list of groups that were working on it, and we called together a 3-day strategy session of kind of a who's who, not just in the United States, but from around the world. We had people from Canada, and we had people from Europe. We had Charles Secret, who was running the Rainforest campaign for Friends of the Earth UK, mostly an anti-timber campaign at the time. But we also had native leaders from North America. Winona LaDuke was there, for instance. John Trudell was at the founding conference of the Rainforest Action Network, a woman named Neelak Butler. But we had native people also from South America and from Borneo, in fact, as well as Japanese environmental activists. So it was a real global gathering for 3 days. And at the end of it, they wanted Rainforest Action Network to sort of head up a global coalition. And I said, well, to some extent we can, but for the most part, I want to focus on North America and getting our foot off the throat of the rainforest. And that became kind of the approach. And our very first campaign was the Burger King boycott.
Before you do that, can I just a generic question? How did you describe or promote the rainforest issue to both other environmental groups and to just kind of the general public? How did you try to convince them this was an important issue? Because it's not immediate.
The big NGOs at the time in the US was, of course, World Wildlife Fund, Conservation International, and the Nature Conservancy International, right? And those were the 3 groups that did not come to my 3-day strategy session.
Right.
But NRDC came, Greenpeace, even though they weren't working on rainforests, were there. National Wildlife Federation, Environmental Defense Fund, and quite a few other environmental groups were there. And the bulk of their focus, most of the groups were based in, or at least had a major office in Washington, D.C., and their rainforest work was fighting the World Bank, right? And we wanted to do bigger and broader things with our campaigns, hence the Burger King boycott. And so I think it was personal diplomacy. I used to publish something monthly called the Campaigner Notes. And I would call up the 10 or 15 most active rainforest campaigners and talk to them on the phone and find out what they were doing, put it in little bullet points, photocopy it and mail it around to people. And that was a very useful tool. John Seed from Australia, was the Rainforest Information Center was already happening pre-Rainforest Action Network. And they published something called the World Rainforest Report, which was really an important source of information back then, including to a lot of the scientists. Paul Ehrlich at Stanford was a big fan of the World Rainforest Report, and Rainforest Action Network took over publishing it after a while. And the Earth First Journal, which had quite large, a print journal publication and exposure around the country and the world, you put a 4-page insert in every issue, which was the World Rainforest Report. So we were able to really get the word out in the choir quite effectively. But the birthing of any organization is never one person or even Mike and Roselle and myself. It's a small team of people. And key on that team was a guy named Herb Chow Gunther, who ran the Public Media Center. And so we cut a deal with Herb early on, and they became our, our public relations firm and advertising agency. And when we would do full page ads in the New York Times and even the Wall Street Journal, it was Public Media Center that was helping us with that. And their sophistication was really important. We also did an inexpensive, if downright free, national media campaign, a print ad campaign. We had magazine size full page ads done, camera ready copy on the issue. And we had fractionals, half page, quarter page, eighth page, and we would send them around, everything from Time magazine, which did, use them from time to time when they hadn't sold enough ads. They would put them in for free. And so we were punching above our weight, so to speak, in terms of outreach and publicity campaigns. And then the civil disobedience and the campaigning against Burger King caught a lot of attention as well. And at the point some of that attention was waning, we started cutting deals with our friends in Hollywood and rock and roll celebrities. And the Grateful Dead in 1988 agreed to do a benefit concert for us at Madison Square Garden. And at the point of Jerry Garcia starts embracing your cause and your organization, and Jerry and I were doing the morning show on CBS and such things, then you begin to reach a different segment of the media, and you get outside of the choir. But a lot of good people and a lot of sort of celebrity entertainment circles wanted to be helpful, and that helped things spiral along through the late 80s and the 90s.